industrial metal besides being a precious metal. So you always used to be a precious metal, and then we discovered all these cool uses for it, and we've been consuming it, vast quantities of it. So we've consumed more ounces of silver than exist above ground now. And there are not enough, if we were to allow China to have the same electrification process that we enjoyed here in the U.S. over these past 100 years, but specifically the last 40 years, and China were to do it, it would take 5 times the amount of silver that's available at this point on above ground.
Wow.
So we know that we're at a deficit there. We also have a situation where we know that the U.S. and other, U.S. more than anybody else, but in the developed world, but we're also almost at the same level as China in the sense that our electrical system is so old that it's going to demand major re-inputs, and we're going to have to re-electrify this nation if we survive into, say, 2015 as a national entity, and we're going to have to get real serious about it. Now, in either case, either of our nations would consume all of the silver that's available at this point on the planet, and there wouldn't be any more. So all of those people that are holding silver, we're going to have to be given something of greater value in order to give it up. So you can see how the pressure on silver as a commodity is going to, as an industrial commodity, is going to seriously impact its value holding as a precious metal. And we actually have data from way back in the early part of the process that suggested that silver would cross parity with gold.
Wow. And maybe if you're correct in your analysis about the actual physical shortage of silver, maybe that would be the precipitating factor where the Goldman Sachs and the J.P. Morgans couldn't continue to do as much of what they do as far as selling it short?
Yeah, the whole selling it short is an abstraction laid upon an illusion, but I would agree that it would be something external to the legal system that would cause the whole situation to crash, and it's probably crashing as we speak.
Chances of, as you say, the chances of the judges going along with, because they own the judges, right?
Correct, yeah. So the judge will do what they're told to do by their boss. It's just the way it works. Obama does what he's told by his boss. It's just the way it works.
Okay, we have several, we have lots of questions here, but we have several questions on the stock market. This is one that's kind of indicative. Clif, I have a sneaking suspicion that the rally we have seen in stocks is a direct result of manipulation, i.e. buying individual stocks and indexes by the plunge protection team. Well, okay. you may be onto something. In your linguistics, as part of the market collapse, does this manipulation become apparent to the average person?
We have a situation, it becomes open and exposed. The apparent to the average person stuff, I just don't know. In our linguistics, it suggests that we do reach a point where the stock market and people associated with it are held in disrepute. They're held with the same esteem as criminals, but and where there's in essence a wholesale abandonment of it, but doesn't make any kind of a permanent impact on the average guy. Our data doesn't go there because the average guy is not involved in the stock market. They're not really interacting with it, and it doesn't form that much of a percentage of their day, so to speak.
Let's see. Another question from Lucas on the stock market. How about the coming stock market collapse he forecasts? Does he have any idea on how it will go during these fall months? Will it affect the stock market or just the U.S. dollar currency?
That's the whole thing. I can't tell. Our language for the market, as I've always maintained with George, doesn't necessarily show a crash per se. It may be a giant melt-up in the sense that I've always jokingly told George before the market becomes irrelevant, we might well hit Dow 20,000. It doesn't appear that now, but if we get the kind of currency collapse in terms of value, one of the expected side effects would be an escalation in nominative prices on things like the stock market another illusion. So indeed, we may see a situation where they devalue the dollar, but everybody is suddenly, at least insofar as the Wall Street guys, is out there touting, Dow 20,000 because it's rocketing up. Well, it's rocketing up because the dollar is worth far less.
So when you're talking about devaluing the dollar, are you suggesting an actual change in the zeros, just adding a zero one day?
No, it won't come
slowly.
It won't come that way. It's already coming extremely slowly in the sense that you go to your local farmer's market out here and you see a large organic tomato, and you look at it all weighed out, and it's $6 for a tomato. Well, the tomato is not really worth any more than the tomato was last year, but the dollar is worth a whole lot less because it takes a lot more of them.
You don't need to change the currency to do that.
Correct.
Just print more money.
Correct, and so we're going to get that form of hyperinflation. And what I actually suspect will occur will be hyperinflation in the form of escalating food prices, and they do it sneaky because on the manufacturing and the corporate side, they make the packages smaller or the stuff inside way less, but the package stays the same and so on. And so they're devaluing the dollar continuously around you in all of these various little forms. I suspect, however, that we're going to get that we are very close to a crisis, and that crisis is going to cause the officialdom to have to do something relative to the official value of the dollar that will cause it to be that much more apparent.
Why would, if they do this slow, steady stealing, kind of eating out our substance, as the founding father said, which is what they're doing, right? Why would they allow some kind of a crisis point? I mean, if it's just a slow, steady eating away at the dollar, why can't they just continue with that until they may never catch on. We may never catch on.
Sure, and it is their hope that we would never catch on, or that not enough of us would catch on.
What do you think could happen would make us catch on to a point where a tipping point, and say, there'd be so many ahas that something would happen, I guess, is what I'm asking.
Well, it's an exogenous effect. Okay, let's look at it's how reality works. It gets back to that vibrational level of things. Okay, in order for reality to exist, the illusion of material world, we have to have change.
Right.
Change occurs through the introduction of time.
Right.
And movement. Right. Well, let's look at some of the time and movement side effects. And let's take a historic example that we know had real impacts, and that was the arising of the dog walking hour in Moscow. In the late 60s and in through the 70s, Russia was was the core of the Soviet Union. And the Soviet Union was a dictatorship, much like we have in the United States today, of the powerful against the powerful elite few against the many. And they controlled everything, and one thing they controlled there in Russia was the state media. Much as we have now, we have corporate media that's controlled, they had state media. 5 individuals made the decision for all of the Russians in terms of what they saw. Here we have 5 individuals making the decisions for all of the Americans and Anglosphere in terms of what we see in the media. This led to a situation where one guy, one day, the national news in Russia would come on because they span 12 time zone. The national news was sort of staggered, and in Moscow they had national news at 9 p.m. And so from 9 p.m. until 10 p.m. every day they had the national news in Russia. And one day this guy in Moscow discovered that the national news was lying to him, and he was just thoroughly disgusted with it. He knew they were telling him a falsehood because he had been involved in the incident, and the details are immaterial because he knew they were lying to him. And so he got disgusted, and he just couldn't watch the news anymore, so he got up and told his wife he was just going to go take the dog for a walk. And so every night, because the news was lying to him, he couldn't stand to be told these lies anymore. He just couldn't wrap his head around why they would lie to him, and it led to all these different thoughts and so on. He would go out and he'd walk his dog and think about it, and probably smoke his Russian cigarettes. And so he's walking the dog in the night at Moscow, and one day it dawns on him to look up from his walking the dog, and he looks around and, there's a guy over there walking a dog. There's another guy walking a dog. And pretty soon he discovers that, there's a whole lot of people out here walking dogs from 9 to 10 at night. And it was a side effect of the fact that all these people felt lied to by their national news, and they turned off the national news and went out. And when they discovered how many other people were also being aware of being lied to, it led to what was known as the White Revolution and Perestroika and the downfall of the communist state. And it all came about because of the way in which their news was delivered and the time zone synchronization and the fact that all these people got disgusted and walked out and would walk their dogs rather than listen to that bilge anymore.
Very interesting. So what about then the 100th monkey kind of idea? The more people that get awake, the more people
will become awake.
That seems relevant and reasonable, doesn't it?
Sure, and in fact it works at the energetic level.
Yeah, of course.
Because of if I'm awake and aware and I'm starting to look around me and I'm engaging with universe around me in an other than stupefied fashion, then I'm going to put out a higher level of vibration which will affect those individuals around me.
I think so, yeah. Feels like Clif High is with us, and we have so many emails, so many phone calls. If you're on hold, stay right there. We'll get to you. Stick around. Thanks for your patience. 888-663-6386. It's a cinch. All of us listening here this morning, and once again, you can hear the rain coming down in Dripping Springs on our tin roof in our studio. I mean, it's really just doesn't stop. Whitewater rafting in our creek. Anyway, it's pretty much a cinch between you and I that we know that gold and silver is going to go up from here. We don't believe it. We know it. Personally, I don't think it's going to ever go straight up. I think our man Andrew Goss, who we have on each week, teaches us it's kind of a ratchet thing. The boys don't allow it to go kind of straight up because everybody gets scared and all of that. But we know it's going to go up. Now, there's a lot of ways you can invest in gold and silver. You can get these exchange-traded funds. You can have somebody store the gold for you and all of this stuff. And I tell you what, I've lost enough in my life with paper gold and silver to know that that's not the way I will ever do it again. Well, except for maybe now and then, wow, here coming down, maybe doing a little bit of a silver call or a gold call or something like that for 3 or 4 months. It's pretty, you can make a little bit of money that way. But for my money, after my years of hanging out with Andrew Goss, every Saturday on One Radio Network, a currency historian, is physical possession is the absolute safest, easiest, best way to hold gold and silver, in my opinion. And I also think that real American money is the best because it's a private transaction. You will not get a 1099 from Andrew Goss when you buy or sell gold or silver coins if it's real money. You don't have to. Now, I'm not suggesting you don't pay taxes on it, but it is your job to report that, so don't forget. Come April 15th, don't forget to report your buying and selling of those gold and silver coins on your tax return. Because if you don't report it, it's not going to get reported, and you won't pay taxes on it. So you don't want to do that because you know the law. So don't forget. But you will not get any paperwork. That's the difference between gold and silver, real American coins, and bullion. You do get a 1099 with bullion. It's a big difference. Also, in the history, they've never tried to recall bullion or make it illegal to trade bullion or make you a gold hoarder, which could be done again. People say, well, maybe we'll do that with gold and silver coins. Andrew doesn't think so, and I agree. Well, my agreement doesn't mean anything. Andrew doesn't think so because the boys, the powers that be, you know what? Most of them own gold coin collections because they know it's a very interesting, private way to store their wealth. So they don't want to mess with it either. Most really rich, wealthy people have coin collections. It's just the way it is. So there you have it. That's my pitch for Andrew Goss. Listen to his archives on One Radio Network. Probably 250 interviews. This guy knows his stuff. He understands the boys. He's been at it for 35 years and how the deal works. And it's all on OneRadioNetwork.com. If you'd like to reach Andrew Goss, here's his phone number. 800-468-2646. That's 800-468-2646. AndyGoss.com. 800-468-2646. We are waxing and waning, philosophizing, having a great time with Clif High, Half Past Human. Now, your latest report was just come out, what, Clif, 2 weeks ago?
A little over that, I think, yeah.
And it's only $10.
Yeah.
That's a great thing.
It's a good price. It gives everybody a heads up.